I was 71 years old the morning my daughter called me useless in front of God and everyone I'd ever loved. I sat in the fourth pew of St. Catherine's Church, my hands gripping the worn leather purse in my lap so tightly my knuckles had gone white. Inside that purse were 43 years of documents, construction permits, material receipts, photographs, time logs, every piece of evidence that would prove what I'd built with my own two hands, what I'd sacrificed a decade of my life to create, what Caroline was now standing in front of 200 people claiming I had nothing to do with. "Before we begin the baptism," my daughter announced from the front of the church, her voice carrying across the sanctuary with that honey-sweet tone that made my stomach clench. "I want to acknowledge someone who thinks she's very important to this church." My heart started pounding. I could feel it hammering against my ribs, could feel the flush creeping up my neck. "My mother, Vivian, likes to tell everyone she built St. Catherine's," Caroline continued, and she actually made air quotes with her fingers. Several people in the congregation shifted in their pews. "But let's be honest about what that means. She helped. She volunteered, like lots of people did. She painted some walls, maybe moved some lumber around." I couldn't breathe. The church suddenly felt too small, too hot, even though it was a crisp October morning in Youngstown, Ohio. "But calling herself the builder," Caroline laughed, actually laughed. "That's like the person who brings paper plates to a potluck claiming they cooked the meal." "Mom, I love you, but you're being useless when you take credit that doesn't belong to you. This is Sarah and Tom's day, not yours. Can we please let them have their moment without your constant need for attention?" I wanted to stand up, wanted to open my purse right then and pull out the construction permit from 1982 with my name only, my name listed as general contractor. Wanted to show everyone the photographs of me pouring concrete, installing electrical wiring, glazing windows, carving pews. Wanted to scream that I'd spent 10 years of my life building every single inch of this building, that my hands had bled into the foundation stones, that I'd learned masonry and carpentry and electrical work from library books and YouTube videos and patient mentors at the hardware store, because the bishop had told me it was impossible, and I'd looked him in the eye and said I'd do it anyway. But I sat frozen, completely frozen, while my daughter smiled at the congregation like she'd just said something perfectly reasonable, then turned toward the baptismal font where my granddaughter Sarah stood holding baby Michael, carefully not looking at me. Father Thomas, who'd been standing by the altar, looked stricken. His eyes found mine across the church, and I saw something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Concern, yes, but something else too. Something that almost looked like determination. "Well," he said quietly, clearing his throat, "that's quite an introduction, Caroline. Before we proceed with the sacrament of baptism, I think there's something the congregation should know. Let me take you back to understand how I got here. How the daughter I'd raised alone, the girl I'd given everything for, had become someone capable of standing in the church I'd built with my own hands and telling everyone I was useless. Because this wasn't the first time. This was just the most public. The pattern had been building for 3 years, each incident worse than the last, and I'd been documenting every single one, never imagining I'd need the evidence until it became impossible to ignore that I did. I remember the first time I sacrificed everything for Carolyn. She was 22 years old, fresh out of college with her teaching degree, and she called me from Virginia, in tears. "Mom, I got the job," she said, her voice shaking with excitement and panic in equal measure. "The one at Fairmont Academy. The one I've been dreaming about since sophomore year." "Oh, honey, that's wonderful." I was in my kitchen in Youngstown, making dinner, and I'd set down the wooden spoon to press the phone closer to my ear. "When do you start?" "That's the problem. They need me there in 2 weeks. I have to relocate immediately, or they'll give the position to someone else." "But Mom, I need first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, and enough to furnish a studio apartment in Arlington. I don't get my signing bonus for 3 months." My stomach dropped. "How much are we talking about?" $12,000. She said it fast, like ripping off a bandage. "I know it's a lot. I wouldn't ask if this wasn't my dream job, but if I don't take it now, another opportunity like this might never come again." I walked to my desk where I kept my savings passbook. $14,600. I'd been saving for 5 years to replace the roof on my house, the house Caroline had grown up in, the house where I'd raised her alone after her father died when she was 3. The roofer had quoted me $13,800 just 3 weeks earlier, and I'd been 2 paychecks away from scheduling the work. The roof leaked in 3 places. I'd been putting buckets in the hallway and my bedroom during rainstorms for the past 2 years, sleeping with towels around my bed, racing to empty containers before they overflowed. The ceiling had water stains that were getting worse. The roofer had told me that if I waited much longer, the damage to the rafters would cost thousands more to repair. "How soon do you need it?" I asked. "By Friday." That's when I have to give them my answer and sign the lease. I called the bank that afternoon. "How much do you need?" the teller asked when I explained I was making a withdrawal for my daughter. $12,000. I didn't let my voice shake. I transferred every penny Caroline asked for. I lived with those buckets in my hallway for another 4 years while I saved up again, sleeping with towels around my bed during every storm, watching the water stains on my ceiling spread like dark continents on a map. When I finally got the roof replaced, the rafter damage cost an additional $3,200 to repair. $17,000 total. 15 years of careful saving, gone because I'd given Caroline her dream on a 2-week deadline. And Caroline, she took that job. She thrived at Fairmont Academy. 3 months after she started, she met David at a faculty mixer. 6 months after that, they were engaged. A year later, they had a beautiful wedding that I paid for another $18,000 I'd saved for my own retirement. They moved to Columbus into a house with 5 bedrooms and a 3-car garage. And Carolyn sent me a photo of their kitchen with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. She never mentioned paying me back. Not once in 22 years. But I wasn't bitter about that. I was her mother. That's what mothers do. We sacrifice so our children can have better lives than we had. I'd been proud to give her those opportunities. Proud to watch her build the successful life she'd always wanted. What hurt was what came after. What started 3 years ago when David got his promotion to senior partner at his law firm and Caroline decided her life needed to look even better than it already did. The second time I gave Caroline everything. She was 39 years old and pregnant with my granddaughter Sarah. She called me on a Thursday evening, her voice tight with stress. "Mom, we found the perfect house. 5 acres, gated community, the best school district in Columbus, but we need to make an offer this weekend. And we're $28,000 short of the down payment. David's bonus doesn't come until January, and if we wait, we'll lose it." I was sitting at my kitchen table, looking at the financial planning documents spread in front of me. I'd been meeting with my advisor that afternoon, finally putting together a real retirement plan. At 68, I was still working as an office manager at a small manufacturing plant, but I'd been planning to retire at 70. The advisor had told me that if I could add $30,000 to my retirement account and let it grow for 5 years, I'd be comfortable. Not wealthy, but comfortable. I could travel a little, maybe take that trip to Ireland I'd always dreamed about. "Mom, are you there? How much did you say you need?" "It's Bath Rosemary." Worse than I initially thought. Derek swiped through several images, each one showing damage from different angles. "You've got a section about 8 feet by 12 feet that's been compromised. Some of those shingles are barely hanging on. With another strong gust, they could tear off completely. And then you're looking at water damage to your attic, your insulation, potentially down into your ceiling." I felt my stomach clench with worry. "What do we do?" "I can tarp it temporarily, right now, to get you through until morning. But Rosemary, this is a bigger issue than just some loose shingles. I need to see what's happening underneath. Check the decking. Make sure the structure itself hasn't been compromised. And honestly," he lowered his voice, his expression shifting to something that looked like reluctant concern, "I don't feel comfortable leaving you here alone with this kind of damage. If that tarp doesn't hold, if more of the roof gives way, you could have a serious situation on your hands. I'm sure I'll be fine until you can come back in the morning." "No." The word came out sharper than I expected, and Derek seemed to realize it, because he immediately softened his tone. "I mean, I'd never forgive myself if something happened and I could have prevented it. Look, I know it's the middle of the night, but why don't you pack a quick bag and come stay with Sarah and me? Just for tonight, until I can get this properly assessed and fixed. We've got the guest room all set up. Sarah would want you there." I hesitated. The offer was generous, certainly, but there was something about leaving my home in the middle of the night that felt too dramatic, too much like surrendering to fear. "That's very kind, Derek, but I really think I'll be okay. Martha's right next door if I need anything." Martha's an 80-year-old woman. Derek's voice took on a patient tone, the kind one might use with a child who didn't understand the danger. What's she going to do if part of your ceiling caves in? Rosemary, I'm not trying to alarm you, but as a contractor, I've seen what happens when people underestimate structural damage. Please, let me at least tarp this up really well, and then you can decide. But while I'm up there, I want you to pack a bag, just in case. Can you do that for me? The logic was sound enough, and I found myself nodding. Derek squeezed my shoulder gently, that warm smile back on his face. That's my sensible mother-in-law. This is just precautionary, okay? Better safe than sorry. He headed back outside, and I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, moving slowly as my hip, the one that had been bothering me since summer, minded me not to rush. I pulled my small rolling suitcase from the closet, the one I used for my annual trip to visit my sister in Michigan. What did one pack for an emergency overnight stay? I folded a change of clothes, added my toiletries, grabbed my medications from the bathroom cabinet. Below me, I could hear Derek moving around outside, the occasional thump and scrape of his work. I added my phone charger to the bag, my book. I was halfway through a mystery novel from the library, and looked around my bedroom, this space that Richard had shared, that held so much of my life, just for one night, I told myself, pulling the suitcase behind me as I made my way back downstairs. Derek was waiting in the kitchen when I returned, and I noticed immediately that he'd brought in 2 large cases of tools and supplies that now sat by my back door. He was typing something on his phone but looked up when I appeared with my suitcase, all set. He smiled at me, but there was something in his eyes that I couldn't quite read. The tarp's secure for now, but Rosemary, now that I've been up there, I think you should definitely come with me, at least for tonight. What did you find? The damage extends further than what's visible from the ground. The decking underneath has some soft spot, signs of rot, possibly from an old leak that's been slow developing. This isn't a quick fix. We're looking at a couple days of work, minimum. And I really, truly don't feel right leaving you here with this kind of compromise to your roof's integrity. I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. It was after 4 in the morning now. The adrenaline from Martha's call had faded, leaving me feeling shaky and overwhelmed. Okay, I said quietly. I'll come. But just for tonight. I'm sure by tomorrow, we'll see what tomorrow brings. Derek picked up my suitcase before I could protest. Let me just secure a few things here first. Why don't you sit down? You look tired. I did sit, sinking into one of my kitchen chairs while Derek moved through my house with purposeful efficiency. I heard him testing my doors, checking my windows. He spent several minutes in my basement. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, and then he was back, wiping his hands on his jeans. All right, I've checked everything. Your basement has some moisture issues too, by the way. I noticed some water staining on the foundation wall. We should address that before it becomes a bigger problem. Oh, I felt the weight of homeownership settling on my shoulders. When Richard was alive, he'd handled these things. Now it all fell to me, and sometimes the responsibility felt crushing. I didn't know. Hey, that's what I'm here for. Derek's voice was warm again, reassuring. You don't have to worry about any of this. I've got you. That's what family does. We take care of each other. Come on, let's get you to somewhere safe and comfortable. You need rest. The drive to Derek and Sarah's house took 35 minutes. They lived in a newer subdivision on the opposite side of Dayton, in a neighborhood where all the houses looked vaguely simply large, modern, positioned on lots that seemed almost too small for their square footage. Derek kept up a steady stream of conversation during the drive, talking about his business, about Sarah's job at the insurance company, about their plans to renovate their kitchen. I listened with half an ear, watching the streets pass by, lit by the occasional street. The storm that Martha had worried about seemed to be holding off, though the wind continued to buffet Derek's truck. Sarah was waiting when we pulled into the driveway. She must have been watching for us, because the front door opened before Derek had even turned off the engine. My daughter rushed out in her bathrobe and slippers, her face creased with concern. Mom, Derek texted me. What happened? Are you okay? Sarah wrapped her arms around me the moment I was out of the truck, holding me tight in a hug that felt both comforting and slightly suffocating. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just some roof damage. Your husband is being cautious, that's all. He's right to be cautious. Sarah pulled back, her hands still on my shoulders. You can't stay there if it's not safe. You'll stay here as long as you need to. We've got plenty of room. It's just for tonight, I said again. But I saw the look that passed between Derek and Sarah, something wordless, and decided that made me feel uneasy without understanding why. The guest room was comfortable, decorated in soothing blues and grays. Sarah fussed over me, making sure I had fresh towels, that I knew where everything was, that I had water on the nightstand. Derek brought up my suitcase, setting it on the luggage rack with careful precision. "You try to get some sleep," Sarah said, kissing my cheek. "We'll talk more in the morning. I'm just so glad you're safe." After they left, closing the door softly behind them, I sat on the edge of the guest bed and looked around the unfamiliar room. Outside the window, I could see the first hints of dawn beginning to lighten the eastern sky. I felt dislocated, removed from my own life. But Derek was right, better safe than sorry. This was just temporary, just until the roof was fixed. I changed into my nightgown, took my evening medications, and slid between the cool, crisp sheets. Sleep should have come. Easily I was exhausted. After all, but instead I lay awake, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of this house, this room that wasn't mine, and wondering why I felt more trapped than protected. I woke to late morning sunlight filtering through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment, I felt completely disoriented, my mind struggling to place where I was. Then memory returned. The 3 a.m. call, the damaged roof, Derek's insistence that I come here. I checked the clock on the nightstand, 10:47. I couldn't remember the last time I'd slept this late. I dressed quickly, my hands moving through the familiar routine, even as my mind remained slightly fuzzy. When I opened the guest room door, I could hear voices downstairs, Sarah and Derek having a conversation in the kitchen. Their words weren't quite clear, but the tone was casual, domestic. The smell of coffee drifted up the stairs. "Mom," Sarah appeared at the bottom of the staircase as I descended, her face lighting up with a smile that seemed slightly forced. "You're up. How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected, actually." I reached the bottom step, accepting Sarah's half hug. "I didn't mean to sleep so late. You needed the rest. Come on." Derek made breakfast. Well, I say breakfast, it's practically lunch now, but there's bacon and eggs still warm. In the kitchen, Derek stood at the island, his laptop open, several papers spread out beside it. He looked up as I entered, his expression shifting into something that looked like professional concern. "Morning, Rosemary. Coffee, please." I settled into one of the bar stools, accepting the mug Derek slid across the counter. "Have you been to my house yet? How bad is it?" I went at first light. Derek turned his laptop to show me more photos, these taken in daylight and somehow looking even worse than the nighttime shots. "I'm afraid it's more extensive than I initially assessed. You've got water damage that's been ongoing for a while, probably months. The decking needs to be replaced in that entire section. And once I pulled back some of the shingles, I found rot that extends to some of the rafters." I felt my stomach sink. "What does that mean in terms of repair?" "We're looking at a significant project." Derek pulled up what appeared to be a preliminary estimate on his laptop. "Material costs alone are going to run around $17,000. Labor will add another $12,000 to that. And that's just for the roof repair. The water damage to your attic and the moisture issues in your basement, those need to be addressed separately. $29,000. The number hung in the air, like a weight. My mind immediately went to my savings account, to the careful budget I maintained on my fixed income. I could cover it, barely, but it would wipe out nearly everything I'd managed to save. The cushion that gave me security. "Oh my God, Mom." Sarah's hand found mine, squeezing tight. That's so much money." "I have savings," I said quietly, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Richard made sure we had an emergency fund. This qualifies as an emergency. Here's the thing though." Derek leaned forward, his elbows on the counter, his expression serious and kind in a way that somehow made me more nervous. "This is going to take time. We're talking about 2, maybe 3 weeks of work. And Rosemary, you can't stay in the house while we're doing this. It's not safe. We'll have parts of your roof open to the elements, workers in and out, potential structural instability while we're replacing those rafters. I could get a hotel." "Absolutely not." Sarah's interruption was immediate and firm. "You're not spending money on a hotel when you're already looking at $30,000 in repairs. You'll stay here. We want you here." "Sarah, that's generous, but I can't impose on you and Derek for 2 or 3 weeks. "It's not imposing." Derek's voice was warm, reassuring. "Your family. This house is plenty big enough. And honestly, it'll be easier for me to coordinate everything if I don't have to worry about you being in a hotel somewhere. I can focus on getting your house fixed up right." The logic made sense, The offer was generous, but something in my gut whispered a warning I couldn't articulate. Still, what choice did I have? I couldn't afford both the hotel and the repairs, and they were right, I was family. This was what family did. Just until the repairs are done, I heard myself say, I don't want to be in your way. You're not in our way. Sarah squeezed my hand again. You're never in our way, Mom. The first 3 days passed in a strange blur of displacement. I tried to settle into the rhythm of Derek and Sarah's household, but everything felt slightly off. I was used to my own space, my own routines, the freedom to move through my day according to my own preferences. Here, meals happened at specific times. Derek had opinions about how things should be done, the right way to load the dishwasher, the proper temperature for the house, which television programs were worth watching. He wasn't unkind about it, but there was an undercurrent of control in everything, a sense that his preferences should naturally take precedence. Sarah seemed different too, more subdued than I remembered. My daughter had always been spirited, independent, full of opinions and energy. But here in her own home, she deferred to Derek, constantly asking what he wanted for dinner before making plans, checking with him before committing to anything, adjusting her own preferences to match his. On the 4th day, I decided I needed to check on my house. I wanted to see the damage myself, to understand what was happening, to feel connected to my own property. After breakfast, I announced my intention. I thought I'd drive over this morning, take a look at how the repairs are coming along. Derek looked up from his coffee, his expression immediately shifting to something concerned. That's not a good idea, Rosemary. There's active construction. It's a safety hazard. I'll be careful. I just want to see. I can't allow it. The words came out firm, brooking no argument. As the contractor on this job, I'm liable for anyone who gets hurt on that site. If you insist on going, I'd need you to sign a waiver absolving me of responsibility. And honestly, I'd rather you just trust me to handle this. That's why you hired me, right? I didn't hire you, Derek. You're doing this as family. Exactly. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm doing this as family, which means I care about your safety even more than I would a regular client. The site isn't secure. There are exposed areas, loose materials, workers who need space to operate. Please, Rosemary, let me handle this. I'll take pictures every day, show you the progress, but I need you to stay away from there until it's safe. I felt the argument die in my throat. He was right about safety, wasn't he? And I didn't want to make his job harder. But the way he'd said, I can't allow it, sat uncomfortably in my chest, like a stone I couldn't swallow. All right, I said quietly. I'll wait. Good. Derek's smile warmed again. Trust me, you'll love what we're doing. I'm not just fixing the damage, I'm upgrading some things while we're at it. Better materials, improved ventilation. Your house is going to be in better shape than it's been in years. That afternoon, I decided to visit Martha. I wanted to thank my neighbor for the original call, and frankly, I needed to feel connected to my own neighborhood, my own life. I mentioned this to Sarah, who was working from home in the small office off the living room. Oh, Mom, that's so sweet. Tell Martha I said hello. Sarah didn't look up from her computer, her fingers still typing. Derek should be home around 5. He said something about bringing dinner, so don't fill up on cookies at Martha's. I found my purse, checked that I had my phone and keys, and headed for the front door. I reached for the handle and pulled. Nothing happened. I pulled again, harder this time. The door didn't budge. Confused, I examined the handle, the deadbolt. Everything looked normal, but the door simply wouldn't open. I tried the deadbolt, turning it back and forth, but still nothing. Sarah, I called out, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. I think there's something wrong with the front door. It won't open. Sarah appeared in the hallway, looking puzzled. Really, that's weird. She came to the door, tried the handle herself, twisted the deadbolt. The door remained firmly shut. Derek was saying something this morning about upgrading our locks. Maybe he already started and didn't mention it. Let me try the back door. But the back door was the same, looking perfectly normal, but absolutely refusing to open. This is so strange. Sarah pulled out her phone. Let me call Derek and see what's going on. I stood in the hallway, my purse still over my shoulder, while Sarah spoke to her husband in low tones. I couldn't hear the full conversation, but I caught phrases, ... won't open, ... double quotes, ... she wants to visit Martha, ... both doors, ... Sarah hung up, turning back to me with an apologetic smile that looked strained. Derek says he installed new smart locks this morning before work. They're supposed to be more secure, but he says they're in setup mode right now, and he won't be able to activate them properly until he gets home. Something about the connection protocol and his phone. He's really sorry. He thought he'd be done before anyone needed to leave, so we're locked in. I heard my own voice rise slightly. We can't leave the house. It's just until Derek gets home. Sarah's tone was reassuring, but her eyes didn't quite meet mine. It's only a few hours, Mom. And honestly, it's kind of nice to have an excuse to just relax, isn't it? We could watch a movie together, like we used to. When was the last time we did that? I wanted to argue that being locked in one's home wasn't relaxing, that this was absurd, that smart locks shouldn't work this way. But Sarah was already guiding me toward the living room, chattering about movie options, and the moment for protest seemed to have passed. Derek came home at 5:30, carrying bags from a Thai restaurant. He walked straight to the front door, did something with his phone, and the lock mechanism clicked open smoothly. There we go. All fixed. He turned to us with a grin. Sorry about the confusion this morning. These new smart locks are supposed to make everything more convenient once they're set up properly. They're connected to my phone, so I can control access remotely. Isn't that cool? No more worrying about lost keys or forgetting to lock up, Derek. I kept my voice steady. We couldn't leave the house all day. Sarah missed an appointment she'd scheduled, and I couldn't visit Martha. I know, and I really apologized for that. He set the food bags on the kitchen counter, his expression contrite. It was a miscommunication. I thought I'd be home much earlier. But look, now it's all set up properly. You won't have that problem again. But shouldn't Sarah and I have keys? Or the codes? What if there's an emergency? The whole point of smart locks is that you don't need keys. Derek began unpacking the food, the conversation already moving past my concern in his mind. And as for codes, well, the system works best with a single administrator. Too many people with access can create security vulnerabilities, but don't worry, I'm always reachable by phone. If you need to leave and I'm not here, just text me and I can unlock the doors remotely. You'll unlock them. I repeated the words slowly, testing the weight of them. We'll need your permission to leave. Derek looked up, his expression shifting to something that looked like hurt. Permission. Rosemary, it's not like that. It's about security, about keeping you both safe. There's been a rash of break-ins in neighborhoods like this. I saw it on the local news last week. I'm just trying to protect my family. Mom, he's right about the break-ins. Sarah was setting out plates, not looking at either of us. It's been all over the neighborhood social media. People are really concerned. I wanted to push back, to insist that this wasn't normal, that adults shouldn't need permission to leave their own homes. But Derek was already moving the conversation forward, talking about the Thai food, about the repairs he'd completed that day, about plans for the weekend. And Sarah was nodding along, agreeing, smoothing over the tension. That night, lying in the guest bed that still didn't feel like mine even after nearly a week, I replayed the day in my mind. The locked doors, Derek's explanation, Sarah's quick agreement. The sense that something was wrong had grown from a whisper to a shout in my head. I picked up my phone from the nightstand, opened my messages, found Martha's number. My fingers hovered over the keys for a long moment before I began typing. Dear Martha, I'm sorry I haven't been able to visit. The repairs to my house are taking longer than expected. How are you? How is Felix? I added a cat emoji at the end, because Martha loved her orange tabby, and sent the message. The response came back within minutes. Rosemary, so good to hear from you. Felix is well but misses you. When are you coming home? There's something I need to tell you about your house. Can you call me? Something about my house. My heart rate picked up. I was about to dial Martha's number when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my door. They paused right outside, and I had the distinct impression that someone was listening, checking to see if I was asleep. I quickly locked my phone and placed it face down on the nightstand, forcing my breathing to slow, my body to relax into the mattress. The footsteps resumed, moving away down the hall. After several long minutes, I heard Derek and Sarah's bedroom door close. I waited another 15 minutes before picking up my phone again, but now I was afraid to call Martha. What if Derek had somehow set up monitoring on the house phone line? What if he could hear my calls? The thought seemed paranoid. But then again, this morning I wouldn't have believed I'd be locked in someone's house, unable to leave without permission. I texted instead. It's late. Can we talk tomorrow? Is everything okay with the house? Martha's response. I hope so, dear, but I haven't seen any workers there. Not since that first morning when Derek was there alone. Call me when you can. Worried about you. The message made my blood run cold. No workers, but Derek had been giving me daily updates, showing me pictures of progress, talking about his crew and the work they were completing. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to think clearly. Maybe Martha had just missed them. Maybe they were working different hours. Maybe her eyesight wasn't as good as it used to be. There had to be a logical explanation, but the knot in my stomach suggested otherwise. The weekend arrived, and with it came a shift in the household dynamic that I couldn't ignore. Derek was home both Saturday and Sunday, and his presence seemed to fill every corner of the house, his preferences shaping every decision. Saturday morning, I woke early, as was my habit. I made my way downstairs, hoping to enjoy a quiet cup of coffee before the household stirred. But Derek was already in the kitchen, working on his laptop at the island. Morning, he said cheerfully. Sleep well. Well enough. I moved toward the coffee maker, but Derek stood, intercepting me. Let me get that for you. I just made a fresh pot. He poured me a cup, adding cream without asking if I wanted it. There you go. Perfect. I accepted the cup, noting that he'd added too much cream. I preferred just a splash, but not wanting to seem ungrateful. Thank you. I thought I might sit on the back patio for a bit, enjoy the morning air. Actually, I'd rather you didn't. Derek's tone was casual, but his words were absolute. I'm having the patio power washed this afternoon, and I've already started moving the furniture. It's not really set up for sitting right now, but the living room has that nice window seat, plenty of natural light there. I felt the refusal like a small slap, but I nodded, carrying my too creamy coffee to the living room window seat. I settled there with a view of the front yard, watching the neighborhood come to life. A jogger passed by. A man 2 houses down retrieved his newspaper from the driveway. Normal Saturday morning activities. I wondered what was happening in my own neighborhood, on my own street. I pulled out my phone, intending to text Martha again, but noticed immediately that my signal was weak, just 1 bar, when I usually had full service with my carrier. I tried to load my email, but the page wouldn't refresh. I checked my settings, but everything looked normal. Derek, I called into the kitchen. I'm having trouble with my phone. The signal seems really weak. He appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Oh yeah, I've been meaning to mention that. We have issues with cellular reception in certain parts of the house, something about the construction materials and the way the house is positioned. But we've got excellent Wi-Fi. You just need to connect to our network. What's the password? Here, let me do it for you. He took my phone from my hands before I could protest, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. There, all set. You should have great connectivity now. He handed it back, and indeed, the Wi-Fi symbol showed full strength. But something about the way he'd taken my phone, the way he'd set it up himself rather than just giving me the password, left me feeling uneasy. I was being paranoid, I told myself. He was just being helpful. That afternoon, while Derek was supposedly power washing the patio, though, I noticed I never actually heard the sound of a pressure washer. Sarah suggested we go through some of my clothes. I was thinking, Mom, while you're here, maybe we could organize your wardrobe a bit. You've mentioned that your closet at home gets cluttered. We could sort through things, see what you really want to keep. It seemed like an innocent enough suggestion, even a helpful one. I agreed, and we spent the next hour going through the suitcase I'd brought and talking about the clothes still at my house. But as the conversation progressed, Sarah kept steering toward suggestions of what I should get rid of. These slacks are pretty worn, Mom. Maybe it's time for new ones. That blouse is so outdated. We should donate it. Do you really need 3 winter coats? We could consolidate. Each suggestion was framed as helpful, practical. But cumulatively, they felt like something else, like slowly dismantling the physical markers of my independent life. Sarah, I finally said, placing my hand over my daughter's to still the sorting. Why does it feel like you're trying to get me to get rid of all my things? Sarah's expression flickered surprise, guilt, something else before settling into reassurance. I'm not, Mom. I just want to help you simplify. You're always saying how overwhelming it is to maintain the house, to keep track of everything. I thought maybe having fewer things to manage would make life easier. Easier for whom? The question hung in the air between us. Sarah's eyes widened, and for just a moment, I saw my daughter, clearly saw the strain, the exhaustion, the fear that lived behind the agreeable facade. "Mom, I just want what's best for you." Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. "We both do. Derek and I, we worry about you. Living alone, at your age, in that big house, with all those maintenance issues. What if something happens? What if you fall, or have a medical emergency, or, I'm 73, not 93. I'm healthy. I'm capable. I know you are. I know. But wouldn't it be nice not to have to worry so much? To have people around who care about you, who can help?" I heard what Sarah wasn't saying. Wouldn't it be nice to stay here, to let Derek handle everything, to give up the burden of independence? And maybe for some people, that would be nice. But for me, independence wasn't a burden, it was dignity. "I appreciate your concern, sweetheart. But I like my life. I like my house, even with its maintenance issues. I like my neighborhood, my routines, my autonomy." Sarah pulled her hand away, standing abruptly. "I need to start dinner." She left the room quickly, and I was certain I saw tears in her eyes. That evening, Derek announced a new house rule at dinner. "I've been thinking about security," he said, passing a bowl of salad. "And I want to implement a check-in system. If anyone leaves the house for any reason, they need to text me when they leave and when they arrive at their destination, and again when they're heading home and when they arrive back. Just so we always know everyone's safe." "Derek, that seems a bit excessive." I tried to keep my tone light, reasonable. "We're adults, not teenagers. It's not about treating anyone like a teenager. It's about family looking out for each other. What if something happened and we had no idea where someone was? How would we help?" He turned to Sarah. "You understand, don't you, honey? It makes sense." Sarah's agreement was immediate, automatic. "I don't mind checking in. It takes 2 seconds. See, Sarah gets it." Derek smiled at me, that warm expression that somehow felt more like a trap than a kindness. "I'm not trying to control anyone. I'm trying to keep my family safe." Is that so wrong? When framed that way, objecting made me seem unreasonable, ungrateful, paranoid. So I nodded, agreeing to yet another small constraint that individually seemed minor, but collectively was building into something I didn't have a word for yet. After dinner, while Derek was in his home office and Sarah was in the shower, I tried to call Martha. I needed to hear my neighbor's voice, to understand what Martha had meant about not seeing workers at the house. But when I dialed, the call wouldn't connect. I tried twice more, with the same result. The call would seem to start, then drop immediately. I tried calling my sister in Michigan. Same problem. Frustrated, I attempted to access my email through the web browser rather than the app. But the browser wouldn't load any pages, despite the Wi-Fi showing full signal strength. I sat on the guest bed, my phone in my hands, and finally allowed myself to think the thought I'd been avoiding. Derek had done something to my phone. The Wi-Fi he'd connected me to wasn't giving me real internet access. It was somehow filtered, controlled, limited. I had no proof. Maybe it was just a glitch. Maybe the router was malfunctioning. Maybe I was being paranoid, seeing conspiracies where there were only technical difficulties and genuine concern for my well-being. But deep in my gut, I knew. The knowledge sat there like a stone, cold and undeniable. I was trapped. Sunday brought a visit from Derek's parents, Gerald and Patricia Walsh, both in their mid-60s, friendly, in that performative way that suggested they were playing roles rather than being genuine. They arrived just after lunch, Patricia carrying a casserole dish, and Gerald with a bottle of wine. Rosemary. Patricia embraced me with the kind of enthusiasm that felt excessive for someone I'd only met a handful of times. "How wonderful that you're staying with the kids. Sarah told me all about your roof disaster. What a nightmare that must be for you." "It's been challenging," I admitted, accepting the hug with stiff politeness. We settled in the living room, and I quickly realized this wasn't a casual visit. Gerald and Patricia had opinions about my situation, and they weren't shy about sharing them. "I was just saying to Gerald on the drive over," Patricia began, her voice rich with concern, "that it's really such a blessing you have family to take you in during this crisis. So many elderly people don't have that support system." "I'm not elderly," I said quietly. "I'm 73. Of course, dear. Still very active and independent, I'm sure. But these things happen. Houses fall apart. Maintenance becomes overwhelming. It's nobody's fault. It's just the reality of aging." Gerald leaned forward, his expression serious. "Derek tells us the damage to your house is quite extensive. More than initially thought. The repair costs are mounting. Derek's been handling everything, Sarah interjected quickly, shooting a warning glance at her father-in-law that I caught but didn't understand. Yes, and isn't that wonderful? Patricia smiled broadly. Having a contractor in the family is such a gift, but Gerald and I were discussing it, and we wanted to talk to you about something, Rosemary. Just as friends, as extended family. I felt my spine stiffen. About what? About whether this might be a sign. Patricia's voice dropped into a register of false intimacy. A sign that it's time to consider other living arrangements. Have you thought about selling the house? The suggestion landed like a physical blow. No, I haven't. I know it's difficult to think about. Gerald's tone was meant to be kind, but it felt patronizing. That house has so many memories, I'm sure. But sentiment aside, is it really practical? You're alone there. The maintenance is clearly more than you can handle, and from what Derek says, even after these repairs, there will be ongoing issues. Old houses are money pits. It's not that old, I protested. It was built in the 70s. Exactly. Patricia jumped on this. 50+ years, outdated systems, outdated construction methods, and the neighborhood. Didn't Derek mention something about declining property values in that area? I looked at Derek, who had been silent during this entire exchange, sitting in his armchair with an expression of mild interest, as if he were watching a television program rather than a conversation about my life. I may have mentioned that property values there haven't kept pace with other areas, Derek said carefully. It's just an observation. The point is, Gerald continued, you could sell that house, take the equity, and have options. Real options. Assisted living facilities these days are like luxury hotels. Or maybe a nice apartment in a senior community where there's no maintenance to worry about. You could travel, enjoy your retirement, not be burdened with home ownership. I don't want to sell my house. My voice came out firmer than I expected. I'm not interested in assisted living. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself and my home. Of course you are, dear. Patricia's smile didn't waver. No one's saying you aren't. We're just suggesting you keep your options open. Think about the future. What happens in 10 years when you're 80? These decisions get harder if you wait too long. The conversation continued for another excruciating hour, with Gerald and Patricia circling back repeatedly to the idea of selling, each time framing it as practical wisdom, as concern for my well-being. And through it all, Derek said very little, while Sarah looked increasingly uncomfortable, her responses becoming shorter and more clipped. After Gerald and Patricia finally left, the house felt even more oppressive than before. I excused myself, claiming exhaustion, and retreated to the guest room. I heard Derek and Sarah talking downstairs, their voices too low to make out words, but the tone suggesting disagreement. I sat on the bed, my mind racing. The visit from Derek's parents hadn't been coincidental. It had been orchestrated, an intervention designed to pressure me toward a predetermined conclusion. The pieces were beginning to fit together into a picture I didn't want to see. Derek wanted my house, not just to repair it, to own it, and he'd constructed this entire situation to make that outcome seem inevitable, even generous. The middle-of-the-night crisis, the insistence that I stay here, the locked doors and communication restrictions, the pressure from his parents, all of it was designed to break down my resistance, to make selling seem like the only reasonable choice. But why? Derek and Sarah were financially comfortable. They didn't need my house, unless they weren't as comfortable as they appeared, unless the big house and the renovation plans and the new trucks masked financial trouble, unless Derek saw my house paid off, sitting on a lot that had appreciated significantly over 32 years as a solution to his own problems. I pulled out my phone, determined to find a way to communicate with someone outside this house. I opened my text messages, found Martha's number, and carefully typed, "Martha, I need help. Can't call. Phone controlled, locked in Derek's house. Not safe. Don't tell them." I hit send and watched the message sit there, the sending indicator spinning endlessly before finally showing failed to send. I tried again, same result. Derek had complete control over my ability to communicate with the outside world. The realization was terrifying, but it also clarified something. I needed to stop thinking of Derek as my concerned son-in-law, and start thinking of him as he actually was, the architect of my imprisonment. Monday morning, Derek announced he had good news. The roof repairs are complete, he said over breakfast, his smile broad and proud. I know it took a bit longer than anticipated, but I wanted to make sure everything was done perfectly. The house is structurally sound again, so I can go home. I felt hope bloom in my chest. Well, not quite yet. Derek's smile didn't falter. We still have the interior work to address. The water damage to the attic, some ceiling repairs in the kitchen, and that moisture issue in the basement. I'd say another week, maybe 10 days. But we're making great progress. I'd like to see it. I kept my voice steady, reasonable. The house. I'd like to see what's been done. I don't think that's wise. Derek, it's my house. I have a right to see it. Something shifted in Derek's expression just for a moment. The mask slipped, and I saw irritation, even anger, flash across his features before the warm concern returned. Of course you have a right. I'm not suggesting otherwise. I just don't want you to be disappointed. Construction sites are messy, chaotic. It doesn't look good yet, but if you really want to go, I do. All right, let me check my schedule. Maybe Wednesday or Thursday. Today. I pushed my barely touched breakfast away. I want to go today. The tension in the room was palpable. Sarah had gone very still, her eyes fixed on her plate. Derek's smile had frozen into something that looked more like a grimace. Today's not good for me, Rosemary. I have meetings, supplier appointments. I can't just drop everything. Then give me the keys, I'll drive myself. You don't have keys. Remember, smart locks. And your car is still at your house. We came here in my truck that first night. I felt my heart racing, my breath coming faster. I was being gaslighted, controlled, imprisoned. And Derek was doing it all with a smile, framing every restriction as protection, every denial as concern. Then, I'll call a rideshare. I stood, pulling out my phone. Your phone doesn't work properly here. Remember, cellular issues. And the Wi-Fi. Derek spread his hands in a gesture of helpless apology. I'm afraid I set up parental controls when I gave you access, for security. It blocks certain apps and services. I can override it if you really need me to. But honestly, Rosemary, why are you being so difficult about this? I'm offering to take you on Wednesday. That's 2 days away. Can't you wait 2 days? The question was framed to make me seem unreasonable, irrational. But I heard the real message. You have no power here. I control everything, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm going to my room, I said quietly, and walked away before either of them could respond. In the guest room, I locked the door at least. This door still had a functioning mechanical lock and sat on the bed, my mind working through the problem systematically. I was a prisoner, but not in any way that would be obvious to outsiders. Derek hadn't chained me up or physically restrained me. He'd simply taken control of every system and resource I needed for independence. My phone, my internet access, my ability to leave the house, my transportation, even my access to my own property. If I called the police, if I could find a way to call, what would I even say? My son-in-law won't let me leave. He'd explain about the smart locks, about security concerns, about keeping me safe during home repairs. He'd show them the photos of roof damage, the repair estimates, the guest room where I was staying comfortably. It would all sound reasonable. Sarah would back him up. She'd tell the police her mother was safe, cared for, perhaps confused by the stress of the situation, and I would look like a difficult elderly woman, causing problems for her patient, generous family. The trap was perfect precisely because it was invisible. But I hadn't survived 73 years by being helpless. I'd raised a daughter largely on my own while Richard worked long hours. I'd managed household finances, made difficult decisions, navigated the complexities of life with quiet competence. I'd lost my husband and learned to live alone without falling apart. I was not a victim. I was a strategist, and it was time to start collecting evidence. That afternoon, while Derek was supposedly at a job site and Sarah was working in her home office, I began my I moved quietly through the house, paying attention to details I'd previously overlooked. The smart lock on the front door wasn't just a lock, it was a commercial-grade system, the kind used in hotels or high-security facilities, completely controlled by Derek's phone. No manual override I could find. The back door had the same system. The windows in my guest room didn't open. I'd thought they were just painted shut, but examining them closely, I realized they'd been deliberately sealed screws driven through the frames, almost invisible unless you were looking for them. In the kitchen, I found the router for the home Wi-Fi system. I tried to access its settings through a web browser on my phone, but it required an administrator password I didn't have. I tried common default passwords, admin password, the street address, but none worked. I checked every room for a landline phone. There wasn't one. Everything in this house was digital, mobile, controlled through systems that Derek administered. In Derek's home office, the door was unlocked, perhaps because he didn't think I'd dare snoop. I found a filing cabinet. The first drawer contained business papers, invoices, contracts, normal contractor things. But the second drawer had a folder labeled Fletcher Property, my house, my name, a folder dedicated to my property. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were multiple documents, a property assessment showing my house valued at $475,000, a market analysis suggesting properties in my neighborhood were experiencing significant depreciation, a mock-up contract for sale, with a space for my signature. And beneath that, a document that made my blood run cold, a draft power of attorney, already partially filled out, that would give Derek Walsh legal authority to make financial decisions on behalf of Rosemary Fletcher, including the sale of real property. The document wasn't signed, wasn't notarized, wasn't legally binding yet, but its existence revealed the plan with perfect clarity. Derek wasn't just trying to pressure me into selling. He was laying groundwork to take legal control of my assets, to sell my house whether I wanted to or not. How would he convince me to sign? Or would he forge my signature? Or would he wait until I was sufficiently worn down, isolated, and desperate that I'd sign anything to end the situation? I photographed every document in the folder with my phone, even though I wasn't sure the photos were actually saving, or if Derek's control over my phone would somehow erase them. But I had to try. Evidence was everything. I was replacing the folder when I heard footsteps on the stairs. My heart leaped into my throat, but I forced myself to move calmly, closing the filing cabinet silently, slipping out of Derek's office and into the hallway just as Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs. "Mom, were you looking for something?" "Just the bathroom," I lied smoothly. I got turned around. These hallways all look similar. Sarah's expression was uncertain, but she nodded. "It's right there." She pointed to the door just past Derek's office. "Are you okay? You look a little flushed." "I'm fine. Just need a moment." In the bathroom, I locked the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. That had been close, too close. I needed to be more careful, but I also needed to act faster. The longer I stayed here, the more normalized this situation would become, the harder it would be to escape. Derek's plan was working through attrition, wearing me down day by day, until I had no fight left. I checked my phone, scrolling through the photos I'd taken of the documents. They were there, at least for now. But I needed to get them to someone outside this house, someone who could help. That night at dinner, Derek made an announcement. "I've been thinking about the timeline for the house repairs," he said, serving himself from a dish of roasted chicken. "And I want to be realistic with you, Rosemary. Some of the interior work is more extensive than I initially assessed. We're looking at another 3 weeks, possibly a month." "A month?" I set down my fork. "Derek, you said it would be 2 or 3 weeks total. It's already been nearly 2 weeks." "I know, and I apologize for the changing timeline, but I'm discovering more issues as I go deeper into the repairs. Water damage is like that. You peel back one layer and find problems underneath. I'm trying to do this right, not just patch things up superficially. Maybe I should get a second opinion, hire another contractor to assess." "Rosemary." Derek's voice took on an edge. "I've already invested a significant amount of my own time and money into these repairs. I've been doing this as family, not charging you my full rates, using connections to get you discounts on materials. If you bring in another contractor now, you'll be starting from scratch, and I guarantee you'll pay double what I'm charging. Is that what you want?" The question was a trap. Objecting made me seem ungrateful, suspicious of his generosity. But agreeing meant accepting an indefinite extension of my captivity. "I'm not ungrateful, Derek. I appreciate everything you've done, but I need to get back to my life. I have commitments, routines, responsibilities." "What responsibilities?" The question came from Sarah, and it surprised me with its sharpness. "Mom, you're retired. You don't have a job to get back to. Your commitments are volunteer work that can wait. What's so urgent about getting back to an empty house?" The implications stung, that my life was meaningless, empty, that my desire for independence was merely stubbornness rather than legitimate need. "My life isn't empty just because I live alone," I said quietly. "I have friends. I have activities. I have a home that's mine, where I make my own choices about how to spend my time. That matters to me." "Of course it matters." Derek's voice had returned to its reassuring register. "No one's saying it doesn't. We're just asking you to be patient while we make your home safe and livable again. That's all. A few more weeks. Is that really so much to ask? I looked at my daughter, hoping to find an ally, but Sarah's eyes were downcast, focused on her plate. Whatever fight had once lived in Sarah seemed to have been extinguished, worn down by 6 years of Derek's particular brand of control. Fine, I heard myself say. A few more weeks, but even as I said it, I was planning. I couldn't wait for Derek to decide I could leave. I needed to escape. That night, I barely slept, my mind turning over possibilities and plans. The windows in my room were sealed. The doors were digitally locked. My phone was controlled. My car was at my house, keys presumably in Derek's possession. I had no money. My purse was in my room, but it contained only about $37 in cash. I couldn't overpower Derek physically. I couldn't outthink his digital systems, but I could be smarter about human factors. The next morning, Tuesday, I woke early and dressed carefully. I needed to seem normal, compliant, defeated. I came downstairs and found Derek already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. "Good morning," I said with a smile that cost me everything. "That smells wonderful." Derek looked surprised but pleased. "Just some scrambled eggs and toast. Coffee's fresh. Perfect." I accepted the coffee, sat at the island, and forced myself to eat the breakfast Derek served me. "I've been thinking about what you said last night, about being patient. You're right. I've been difficult, and you've been nothing but generous. I'm sorry." Derek's expression softened immediately. "Hey, you don't need to apologize. This is a stressful situation. I understand. I was wondering," I continued carefully, "if maybe we could go to the house today. Not to interfere with the work, just so I can see it. I think seeing the progress would help me feel better about the timeline." Derek hesitated, and I could almost see him calculating, weighing the risks against the benefits of appeasing me. "Please, Derek, it would mean a lot to me." "All right," he finally said. "This afternoon. I need to be there anyway to meet with the electrician. You can come along, see what we've accomplished, but you have to stay where I tell you to stay. Some areas aren't safe yet." "Of course. Whatever you say." Victory felt hollow, but it was still victory. I'd be at my house, on my own property. And maybe, just maybe, I'd find a way to get help. That afternoon, we drove to my house in Derek's truck. The familiar streets of my neighborhood filled me with a longing so intense, it was almost painful. I saw Martha's house as we pulled into my driveway, saw the curtains twitch in the front window. Martha was home, was watching. My house looked strange from the outside. There were ladders leaning against the siding, but no work trucks, no signs of active construction. The yard needed mowing, I noticed. Usually, the neighborhood teenager, Marcus, did it weekly, but it looked like it hadn't been touched in 2 weeks. Derek unlocked the front door with a physical key, so he'd installed the smart locks only on his own house. I noted and we stepped inside. The smell hit me first, not the smell of construction and sawdust I'd expected, but the smell of my house, closed up and musty from lack of air circulation. The thermostat was set too low. The house was cold. "Stay here in the living room," Derek instructed. "The kitchen area isn't safe to walk through. I need to go check on something upstairs. Don't wander off." He disappeared up the stairs, and I stood in my own living room, my eyes taking in everything. Nothing looked disturbed. No dust from construction. No plastic sheeting protecting furniture. No signs of the extensive interior repairs Derek claimed to be doing. I moved quickly to the kitchen, ignoring Derek's instructions. The ceiling looked perfect. No signs of water damage. No repairs in progress. I opened the basement door, flipped on the light, and descended halfway down the stairs. The basement looked exactly as I'd left it. No workers had been here. No moisture remediation was in progress. Derek had been lying about all of it. Heart pounding, I climbed back upstairs and heard Derek moving around in my bedroom. I grabbed my landline phone from the side table. I still maintained one, old-fashioned as it was, and lifted the receiver to my ear. Nothing, no dial tone. The line was dead. I checked the connection where the phone cord plugged into the wall jack. It looked fine, but when I tried to trace the line, I discovered Derek had disconnected it at the main box, which was in my basement, deliberately cutting off my ability to call for help from inside my own home. "Find what you needed." Derek's voice came from the stairs, and I spun around, my heart racing. How long had he been standing there? I was just checking on my phone. "It's not working. Probably needs to be reconnected after we did some electrical work." Derek descended the stairs slowly, his eyes never leaving me. I told you to stay in the living room, Rosemary. This is my house, Derek. I'll go where I please. Something in his expression shifted, the mask finally falling away completely. Is it though? Your house? Because from where I'm standing, you don't seem very capable of maintaining it. If it weren't for me, your roof would have caved in by now, would it? Or was there even anything wrong with the roof in the first place? The words hung between us, the accusation finally spoken aloud. Derek's face went through several expressions: surprise, calculation, then settling into something cold and hard. Careful, Rosemary. You're sounding paranoid. Elderly confusion is a serious concern. I'm not confused, and I'm not elderly. What I am is trapped in a situation you've engineered, but I'm not signing anything. Not a power of attorney, not a sales contract, nothing. This is my house, and you have no right to it. Derek took a step toward me, and for the first time, I felt physically afraid of him. He was so much larger, so much stronger. We were alone in my house, isolated, and no one knew to check on me. You're right, Derek said quietly. You're not signing anything today, but you will, because I'm very patient, Rosemary, and I'm very good at getting what I want. You're going to stay in my house until you're so exhausted, so worn down, so desperate for this to end that you'll sign whatever I put in front of you. And then I'll sell this property, pay off my debts, and everyone will think I'm the devoted son-in-law who helped his poor mother-in-law transition to a safer living situation. Sarah will never let you do this. Sarah, Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sarah does what I tell her to do, just like you're going to do what I tell you to do. Now, I think we're done here. Let's go home. The word home, referring to his house instead of mine, felt like a violation. But I had what I needed now: confirmation, certainty. Derek had admitted his plan, revealed his strategy. Now I just needed to figure out how to use that information. We drove back to Derek's house in silence, but as we pulled into the neighborhood, I saw something that made my heart leap. A police car parked 3 houses down. An officer talking to one of Derek's neighbors about what looked like a minor fender bender. Derek saw it too. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Don't even think about it, he said quietly. Think about what making a scene, crying for help. It won't work. That officer will ask, what's wrong? I'll explain, you're my mother-in-law. You're staying with us during home repairs. You're confused and stressed. He'll be sympathetic and leave. And then things will get much worse for you. The threat was clear. But as we pulled into Derek's driveway, as the garage door opened to swallow the truck, I made a decision. I'd been playing defense, reacting to Derek's moves. It was time to play offense. That evening, I was meek, quiet, seemingly defeated. I ate dinner without complaint. I agreed when Derek suggested I might want to see a doctor about my increasing forgetfulness. I went to bed early, claiming exhaustion, but I didn't sleep. Instead, I waited until the house was quiet, until I was certain both Derek and Sarah were asleep. Then I dressed in dark clothes, jeans and a navy blue sweater, and began working on the window. The screws holding it shut were Philip's head, painted over but still accessible. I didn't have a screwdriver, but I had a nail file from my manicure kit and a dime from my wallet. It took 40 minutes of careful, silent work, but I managed to back out the first screw, then the second, the third. By 2:30 in the morning, all 6 screws were out. I carefully tested the window, lifting slowly, praying it wouldn't squeak. It rose with only the faintest whisper of sound. I was on the 2nd floor, but there was a section of roof below my window, the roof over the garage. If I could get onto that, I could reach the edge, hang from it, and drop to the ground. At 73, with my troublesome hip, it wasn't going to be easy, but it was possible. I grabbed my purse, stuffed my phone and wallet inside, and took one last look at the guest room that had been my prison for nearly 2 weeks. Then I pushed the window open as far as it would go, and climbed through. The October night was cold, the roof shingles rough under my hands. I could see my breath, feel the chill through my sweater. Carefully, moving slowly, to avoid making noise, I crawled across the garage roof to its edge. The drop was perhaps 9 feet. Not terrible, but not easy either. I sat on the edge, my legs dangling, and tried to calculate the best way to do this without breaking an ankle or worse. I heard a sound behind me, the window being pushed open further, and turned to see Derek climbing out onto the roof, his face a mask of fury. What the hell do you think you're doing? I didn't answer. I pushed off the edge of the roof, dropping into the darkness below. I landed hard, my ankle twisting, pain shooting up my leg. I gasped but forced myself to move, to run, to hobble, toward the street, despite the agony. Behind me, I heard Derek swearing, heard him climbing down. "Rosemary, stop, you're going to hurt yourself." The irony of him expressing concern about my safety while chasing me down in the middle of the night wasn't lost on me. I limped toward the street, my ankles screaming with every step, and saw lights on in a house 2 doors down. Someone was awake. Derek was behind me now, close enough that I could hear his footsteps. I did the only thing I could think of. I screamed, "Help! Someone help me, please." Lights came on in houses up and down the street. A front door opened the house with the lights already on and a man in his 50s appeared on his porch. "What's going on out here?" "Please," I gasped, reaching the man's front yard, keeping the distance between myself and Derek. "Please call the police. I'm being held against my will. I'm being imprisoned. Rosemary, please." Derek had stopped several feet away, his hands raised in a gesture of appeasement, his voice shifting instantly into that calm, concerned tone. "I'm so sorry about this. This is my Terina. She has dementia. She gets confused at night, tries to wander off. I'm just trying to keep her safe. I don't have dementia." My voice was raw with desperation. "I'm Rosemary Fletcher. I live at 247 Oak Street. He's been holding me prisoner for 2 weeks, trying to force me to sign over my house. Please, please believe me." The man on the porch looked between us, uncertainty written across his face. Behind him, his wife appeared, pulling on a robe. "Should I call 911? She asked her husband. "Yes," I said at the same time. Derek said, "No, that's not necessary. I think we should let the police sort this out," the man said, and his wife disappeared back into the house. Derek's expression flickered through several emotions before settling on resignation. He knew he'd lost this round, but his eyes, when they met mine, promised this wasn't over. More neighbors were emerging now, drawn by the commotion. I recognized none of them. This wasn't my neighborhood, wasn't my community, but their presence was protection. The police arrived within 10 minutes, 2 officers, 1 male and 1 female, both appearing alert despite the late hour. The female officer approached me first. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Jessica Martinez. Can you tell me what's happening here?" I took a breath and told my story, trying to keep it concise and coherent despite my racing heart and throbbing ankle. I explained about the 3 a.m. call, the supposed roof damage, the repairs that never happened, the locked doors and controlled communications, Derek's admission that afternoon about his plan. Derek had his own version delivered with perfect calm to the male officer. "Officer Chen, I heard fragments, very worried about her, showing signs of cognitive decline, trying to keep her safe during necessary home repairs. So sorry for the disturbance. Officer Martinez helped me sit on the porch steps, taking the weight off my injured ankle. "Do you have any proof of what you're telling me? Anything that could substantiate your claims?" "My phone." I pulled it from my purse with shaking hands. I took photos of documents in Derek's office papers showing he's planning to take power of attorney to sell my house. They might still be on here, unless he's erased them remotely. I opened my photo gallery, scrolling back through the pictures. They were there, all of them. The property assessment, the market analysis, the draft power of attorney, the mock sales contract. My hands trembled as I showed them to Officer Martinez. "These are from a file in his home office. He's been planning this. The roof damage might have been real or might have been fabricated, don't know. But the repairs he claimed to be doing don't exist. I was at my house today. There's no construction, no water damage repairs, nothing. He's been lying to keep me at his house, to wear me down until I'd sign these documents." Officer Martinez studied the photos carefully, her expression growing more serious. She called Officer Chen over, showed him the images. Derek's confident demeanor began to crack. "Those are private documents from my home office," he said, his voice rising slightly. "She had no right to photograph them. And they're just drafts, preliminary planning, in case she decided she wanted help managing her affairs." "Did Mrs. Fletcher ask for help managing her affairs?" Officer Martinez asked. "Not in so many words, but she's clearly struggling." "I'm standing right here," I interrupted, "and I can speak for myself. I never asked for help. I never wanted to sell my house. I never gave permission for any of this. He engineered a situation to trap me and manipulate me." Sarah appeared then, running down the street in her pajamas, her face pale with shock and fear. "Mom, oh my God, Mom, are you okay?" What happened? Your husband has been holding me prisoner, I said quietly. And I think you know it. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, and she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The silence was answer enough. Officer Chen stepped closer to Derek. Sir, I'm going to need you to answer some questions, starting with why you installed locks on your doors that can only be opened with your phone, effectively preventing anyone else in the household from leaving. That's a mischaracterization. The smart locks are for security. Security that you alone control. And, according to Mrs. Fletcher, when she and your wife tried to leave the house during the day, they couldn't. That's not security, sir. That's confinement. I watched Derek's face as he realized the situation was slipping beyond his control. His jaw clenched, his hands curled into fists at his sides, but he kept his voice level. I want to speak to my lawyer before I answer any more questions. That's your right, Officer Martinez said. But Mrs. Fletcher, I need to ask, do you want to press charges? What we're talking about here could potentially be unlawful restraint, possibly elder abuse, fraud, and several other charges. I looked at my daughter, saw the tears streaming down Sarah's face, saw the fear and shame and exhaustion. I thought about Derek's parents, about the life Sarah would face if I pursued this, and I thought about myself, about my house, about my independence. I want to go home, I said finally. To my own home. And I want Derek to have no access to my property, no authority over my affairs, and no contact with me. If he agrees to that, and if he returns my house keys and disconnects my phone from whatever controls he installed, I'll consider not pressing charges. Rosemary, you can't just, Derek started, but Officer Chen raised a hand. I think you've said enough, sir. Mrs. Fletcher is offering you a way out of a very serious situation. I'd suggest you take it. Derek stared at me for a long moment, hatred naked on his face now that the mask had finally shattered completely. Then he pulled his phone from his pocket. Fine. Your house is unlocked. You can go back to your precious independence. But when you fall, when something goes wrong, when you realize you need help, don't come crying to us. I won't, I said quietly. Officer Martinez drove me to my house, helping me inside despite my protests that I could manage. The officer insisted on checking the entire property, making sure it was safe and secure. She reconnected the landline phone at the main box, tested it to ensure it worked, and gave me her card. If Derek Walsh contacts you, comes near your property, or attempts any further manipulation, you call me immediately. I mean it. These situations can escalate. And Mrs. Fletcher, the officer's expression was kind but serious. You should consider getting a restraining order. What he did to you, that's not normal family concern. That's control and abuse. After Officer Martinez left, I stood in my kitchen, in my home, surrounded by my things, my yellow walls, and my owl cookie jar, and my vintage teacup stand, finally allowed myself to cry. Not from fear or defeat, but from relief and rage and the overwhelming exhaustion of having fought so hard just to keep what was already mine. My ankle throbbed, my hip ached. I was 73 years old, and I'd just escaped from captivity by climbing out a second-story window. It was absurd and terrifying and somehow triumphant all at once. I made myself a cup of tea, not bothering with the fancy teacups, but using the chipped mug that Richard had given me 30 years ago, the one with the faded flowers. I carried it to my living room and sat in my favorite chair, the one that knew the shape of my body, the one Derek had probably planned to sell or throw away when he liquidated my assets. At 4:30 in the morning, as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the sky outside my window, my phone buzzed. Not the phone Derek had controlled, but my landline. I answered it, and Martha's voice came through, thin with worry. Rosemary, dear God, I saw the police cars, saw lights on at your house. Are you all right? I'm home, Martha, I'm safe, and I have so much to tell you. I tried to warn you, Martha said, her voice breaking. I kept watch in your house, and there were no workers, no repairs, just Derek coming and going, doing I don't know what. I tried to reach you, but he controlled my phone. He controlled everything. But it's over now. Thank the Lord, I've been so worried. When you disappeared for 2 weeks with no word, 2 weeks that felt like 2 years, I said quietly, but I'm back now, and I'm not going anywhere. We talked for another hour, me filling in the details of my captivity and escape while Martha listened with gasps and exclamations of horror. When we finally hung up, full daylight had arrived, and my kitchen was filled with golden morning light. I should sleep, I knew. My body was screaming for rest, but first, I needed to check something. I made my way slowly upstairs, favoring my injured ankle, and climbed the narrow ladder to my attic access. The attic was exactly as I remembered it, dusty, cluttered with boxes and old furniture, but completely dry, no water damage, no signs of rot or structural compromise. The roof decking looked solid, the insulation intact. Derek's crisis had been a fiction, manufactured to create dependence and fear. I climbed down, then made my way to the basement. No moisture problems,
everything
no
looked
water
normal.
staining on the foundation walls that Derek had claimed to see. The only thing out of place was the disconnected phone line, which I'd already had Officer Martinez repair. My house was fine, had always been fine. The only problem had been Derek's greed and his willingness to manufacture an emergency to serve his purposes. I spent the rest of the day methodically reclaiming my life. I called my bank, explained the situation in vague terms, and added additional security to my accounts. I called my lawyer, a woman named Patricia Brennan, whom I'd known for years, and scheduled an appointment to discuss protective measures. I called the locksmith and had every lock in my house changed, including the ones Derek might have copied keys for. I called my insurance company and updated my emergency contacts, removing Derek's name entirely. And I called Sarah. My daughter answered on the fourth ring, her voice small and broken. "Mom, I'm home, I'm safe. And I need you to know something, Sarah. I love you. I will always love you. But I can't have Derek in my life. What he did was criminal. It was abuse. And I won't pretend otherwise to make things easier. I know." Sarah's voice was thick with tears. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't. He's so good at making you feel like you're the crazy one, like you're the problem. And I just... I got so tired of fighting. I understand. I do. But Sarah, you're 39 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. Don't spend it with someone who treats you like a possession to control rather than a person to love. I don't know if I can leave him. I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm just asking you to remember who you are. The strong, independent woman I raised. She's still in there, under all the compliance and fear. And whenever you're ready to find her again, I'll be here." We cried together over the phone, and I heard in my daughter's sobs the grief of recognition, the moment when you finally acknowledge what you've been pretending not to see. "I have to go," Sarah finally said. "He'll be home soon, and if he knows I called you, I understand. But Sarah, my door is always open to you. Always, no matter what." After hanging up, I sat with the weight of those words. My door was open, but I had also changed all the locks specifically to keep Derek out. The contradiction wasn't lost on me. Love and boundaries could coexist, had to coexist, if I was going to protect myself while still leaving space for my daughter to find her way home. Over the following days, my life slowly returned to a rhythm that felt like myself. I volunteered at the community center, worked in my garden, had coffee with Martha, attended my book club. Each ordinary activity felt precious, a reclamation of autonomy that I'd never take for granted again. But I was also vigilant. I installed a security system with cameras covering all entrances to my property. I varied my routines, never following the same schedule 2 days in a row. I kept Officer Martinez's card in my wallet and my phone charged at all times. 10 days after my escape, Patricia Brennan called with news. "I filed for the restraining order like you asked. And Rosemary, there's something else you should know. I did some digging into Derek Walsh's finances. He's in serious trouble, leveraged up to his eyeballs, maxed out credit, facing potential bankruptcy. He needed your house equity badly. This wasn't opportunistic greed. This was desperation." The information explained the intensity of Derek's scheme but didn't excuse it. Desperation might explain the why, but it didn't justify the how. "Thank you for finding that out," I said. "It helps to understand this more. Sarah filed for divorce this morning. She's listed you as her emergency contact. She's asking if she can stay with you for a while." I felt my breath catch. She left him. She left him. She's scared, Rosemary. He's not taking it well, but she's determined. I think seeing you escape gave her the courage to do the same. Tell her yes. Tell her to come home. Sarah arrived that evening with 2 suitcases and eyes red from crying. She stood on my porch, the porch she'd played on as a child, the porch where Richard had taught her to ride a bike, the porch that held so many memories, and looked at me with a mixture of shame and hope. "I'm sorry, Mom, for everything. for not protecting you, for not believing you sooner, for bringing him into our lives in the first place. I pulled my daughter into a tight embrace, feeling Sarah collapse against me, sobbing. You have nothing to apologize for. You're here now. That's what matters. We went inside together, and I made tea while Sarah sat at my kitchen table and really talked for the first time in years. She described the slow erosion of her independence, the way Derek had gradually taken control of every aspect of their life, how he'd isolated her from friends, managed all the finances, made all the decisions, how she'd convinced herself it was love when it was really domination. When I saw you climb out that window, Sarah said, when I saw you risk breaking bones at 73 years old rather than stay one more night in his house, something broke open in me. I realized I'd been making the same prison, just accepting it more quietly. The important thing is you're out now, I said. We're both out. Over the following weeks, mother and daughter rebuilt our relationship in that house on Oak Street. Sarah got a better job at a different insurance company, one where she could use skills she'd neglected for years. She went to therapy, started reconnecting with old friends, laughed in a way I hadn't heard since before the marriage. Derek made threats, legal action, custody claims about non-existent children, demands for half of Sarah's retirement account, but Patricia Brennan handled each one efficiently. When he showed up at my house one night, the security cameras caught him trying the doors, and Officer Martinez arrested him for violating the restraining order. He spent a night in jail and never came back. His business collapsed 3 months later. His house went into foreclosure. I heard through neighborhood gossip that he'd left town, moved somewhere in Florida, started over. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, but I felt no sympathy either. He'd made his choices. Now he lived with the consequences. Martha became a regular presence at my kitchen table, the three of us, Martha, Sarah, and I, forming a sort of informal alliance of women who'd survived. We played cards on Friday nights, took turns hosting dinner, looked out for each other in the way good neighbors and families should. 6 months after that October night when everything changed, I stood on a ladder in my kitchen, painting over the yellow walls with a soft sage green I'd chosen from dozens of samples. Sarah steadied the ladder, passing up paint and brushes, chatting about her day. You don't have to help with this, you know, I said, working the brush into the corner where wall met ceiling. You've been working all day. I want to help. Besides, you're the one who's 73 and on a ladder. I'm just making sure you don't fall. I'm not going to fall. I know you're not, but I'm here anyway. That's what family does. We're here for each other. The real version, not Derek's twisted version. I paused in my painting, looking down at my daughter. Sarah's face had color again, life again. The exhaustion that had marked her features during those years with Derek had lifted, replaced by something that looked like peace. I'm proud of you, I said, for leaving, for starting over, for being brave. I learned from the best. Sarah smiled up at me. You showed me how it's done. We worked together in comfortable silence for a while, the act of transforming the space feeling symbolic of larger transformations. When we finished for the evening, stepping back to admire the fresh sage walls, I felt something settle in my chest, a sense of rightness, of home reclaimed and life restored. That night, alone in my bedroom, I opened my journal, a practice I'd maintained for 50 years, and wrote. October changed me. I learned that safety can be a cage, that love can be control, that family can be the source of the greatest danger and the deepest comfort. I learned that at 73, I'm still capable of courage, still willing to fight for my autonomy, still unwilling to surrender my dignity for the illusion of security. Derek thought my age made me vulnerable, made me an easy target for manipulation. He was wrong. My age gave me something he couldn't anticipate: 7 decades of experience recognizing when something is wrong, the confidence to trust my own judgment, and the determination to survive that comes from having already survived so much. I am not a victim. I am not helpless. I am not diminished by age. I am a woman who climbed out a window rather than stay imprisoned. I am a mother who showed her daughter that leaving is possible. I am a neighbor who Martha could count on to come home. I am myself, fully and completely, in this house that is mine, living the life I choose. That 3 a.m. call was supposed to be the beginning of my loss of independence. Instead, it became the catalyst for reclaiming everything Derek tried to take. He sealed every exit to keep me safe, but I found a way out anyway. Not because I'm special, but because I refused to accept his definition of safety, his narrative of my helplessness, his plan for my future. This is my house. This is my life. and no one gets to take that from me. I closed the journal and turned off the light, settling into my own bed, in my own room, in my own home. Outside, the October wind that had started this whole ordeal whispered through the oak trees, but this time it sounded like freedom. Downstairs, Sarah slept in her childhood bedroom, the one I'd kept exactly as she'd left it, waiting for the day my daughter might need a refuge. In that moment, I understood that the house I'd fought so hard to keep wasn't just about property or independence. It was about maintaining a place where people I loved could always find their way home, a place where doors opened rather than sealed shut, where safety meant freedom rather than control. The roof was fine. It had always been fine. But even if it had been damaged, even if every shingle had blown away in that October storm, I would have found a way to fix it myself, on my own terms, in my own time. Because that's what capable women do. We solve problems. We endure hardship, we survive manipulation, and we keep standing. At 73, I had climbed out a window, dropped 9 feet to the ground, twisted my ankle, and run through the darkness screaming for help. It wasn't dignified, it wasn't easy, but it was necessary, and I'd done it. And I would do it again, every single time, rather than accept a cage dressed up as safety. Outside, the neighborhood slept peacefully, unaware of the quiet revolution that had taken place within their midst, a revolution of one woman refusing to be controlled, one daughter finding the courage to leave, one house that remained a home instead of becoming a prison. Martha's light was still on next door, and I knew my friend was probably watching, keeping vigil the way she had that first night when she'd called about the roof, the way good neighbors do, the way real families should. I closed my eyes and slept deeply, dreamlessly, securely, in the house that was mine, in the life I'd fought to keep, in the freedom I'd earned. The 3 a.m. call had been meant to trap me. Instead, it had freed me. And that, I thought as I drifted into sleep, was the most perfect irony of all. For the first time in my life, I understood that being safe didn't mean being protected by someone else. It meant having the strength to protect yourself, the courage to recognize danger, even when it wore a familiar face, and the wisdom to know that the most dangerous prisons are the ones we're told are for our own good. I was Rosemary Fletcher, 73 years old, and I had just learned that I was stronger than I ever knew.